Hello, everyone, to the World of Dragons podcast, the podcast where a dragon and his rider get together to review, discover, and discuss dragon-centric media and literature, including but not limited to books, movies, shows, and games, to help you dragon fans find the next World of Dragons you wish to visit. We have our special second part episode here for the Lost Firebreather by DM Gilmore. It being released only a week ago, we just split this episode into two halves, so we had to do the intro again. We normally don't do it this way, but alas. I am your Dragon Ray, and here's my rider with a terrible headset.
Yeah, we had a little technical difficulties. Apparently the new headset I got is worse than my old one.
Absolutely. I've been saying that for a week, but he didn't know that because
I've never heard myself.
Yeah, but every time we record, we do a little, 1, 2, 3 testing in our program to make sure we're working fine, and he could hear it there, and he's like, oh god, this sucks.
Yeah. But the important thing is the new headset doesn't give me migraines, because the last headset, I think, squeezed my skull to the point where I was just always in pain.
Yeah. It's just... It was really bad for recording because I had a lot of feedback. Discord, I could, give up, deal with it, but no, not for recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now he's borrowing my other standing mic, the one that I use for when I'm just playing games and talking with people.
The problem with that is that if I even touch my desk,
I'll leave that one in so they can hear what we're talking about. I used to have a whole bunch of, I'm pretty sure if you guys listen to old episodes right before when I was just, scanning my audio, you could hear a lot of ka-dungs every time I touched my desk while doing whatever, getting a drink, putting the bottle down, turning in my chair, my knee hitting the leg, whatever, right? So I have a separate mic that attaches to a bookshelf next to me. It's got an arm. I just don't usually like using this one because it requires I be facing it and talking into it to pick up all my audio, which is annoying when playing games. But whatever. Behind the scenes, microphones. Eventually I do want to get, actual, good quality mics. But those are several $100s, so that's going to have to wait a bit.
Yeah.
Alright, anyway, so yes, we are here with part 2. The Lost Firebreather. It still feels awkward doing it this way because I'm like, what about all our intro stuff, like our dragon news? And
yeah, no, this is coming directly after the other one.
As if we had a musical number, so we'll just get, right into it, right?
Yep.
Phantom, anything burning in your pocket you need to get out right now before we go through just the bullet point list?
I'm going through my notes here. I have several things, but they're plot specific. So, but I did write a little note for myself here about the different main characters. And I wrote out Ash, main character, whiny bastard. Pike, main character, incel piece of shit. Hammer, deserter Ironscale, cool dude. Scout, Cloudseeker, fucking nerd. And Elbuka, Ash's brother, heart emoticon.
So which one's your favorite?
Hammer. Hammer followed by Scout. Well, Elbuka is probably... I mean, he's kind of obvious because he's the older brother and blah, blah, blah. I really like him. Followed by Hammer, followed by Scout. Originally, I was going to say that I was going to put Ash and Pike on a 10 scale. 0 being I fucking hate their guts and wish them dead, and 10 being I love them. Ash started off at a 4, and Pike started off at a 1, and then Pike got worse, and Ash kind of got better. But there was a couple things toward the very end of the book that made me immediately just go ugh with Ash. Pike never really pulled up from a 2 for me. He was cartoonishly stupid and cartoonishly evil throughout most of the book. And
really? I wouldn't call him cartoonishly.
He's cartoonishly in the sense where it's dude, it's so fucking obvious that what you're doing is wrong and despicable, and you still are doing it because getting a half name is more important than stomping on everyone in front of you. And it's
to be fair. Remember, this is supposed to be written for kids, and so it's better to be a bit more bluntly black and white like that. Cartoonishly evil, as you'd put it.
I got into an argument on a Reddit about this, about the Minecraft movie, about why it sucked, and I think kids deserve better. I think that using the excuse, well, it's for kids, is a really lame excuse nowadays, because kids have had better. You can do really amazing storytelling for kids, and not dumb it down to, a ridiculous degree. I'm not necessarily saying this book is that bad. I'm just saying that I don't like that excuse of, well, it's for kids.
I gotta say, the fucking whiplash I just had when you said the Minecraft movie, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Well, because the conversation came up in the Minecraft movie and someone was like, well, it's for kids. And my response was, yeah, and the Angry Birds movie was for kids. And that had a better story and was better put together. You know, the Trolls movie had a trilogy and those were amazing. They're all kids' movies. It's just Minecraft was scraping the bottom of the barrel. And I'm not saying that this book did that. I'm saying Pike was like that to me. Pike was incredibly unlikable throughout the entire book to the point where I actually got upset when I would look at the top of the chapter and see that it said Pike. I'm like, oh god, I gotta fucking follow this loser.
I don't think Pike was that bad. He was definitely my least favorite, but I wouldn't call him cartoonishly evil. It wasn't even that bad. As far as like the whole like stomping on everyone else to get his half name, it's like, yes, that was a very self-centered and selfish thing that he did, but to me it made sense because he was born royalty in a society where that honor or whatever was supposed to be everything. And again, he's also only like human equivalent of like 14, so he's gonna make a couple of irrational decisions.
Yeah. There was, seeing as we're talking about spoilers now, there was one part in the book. So Pike was always like a 1 or a 2 to me, and then what dropped him to a 0 was he commandeers a vessel. What was it called? The Hornet.
Yeah.
And it's like a little sloop, that he uses with these 2 soldiers, and the 2 soldiers at first are lazy layabouts. They're pretty bad, and he kind of whips them into shape and threatens them a little bit or whatever. But when he meets back up with them later on in the book, they're at attention. The ship is ready to go, and he decides within his power to give them half names, and they're elated. And then 2 chapters later, they're killed because of his stupid decision.
No, that was actually okay. So first off, it sucks that they got killed. That was like, I was like, whoa, okay, that's like really rough to kill them at this point in their little development. But no, that wasn't his stupid decision necessarily. That was actually him making a good decision and wanting to land to kind of ride out the storm and whatnot.
Okay,
it was in response to him capturing the spirits. So the spirits are being very angry, but nobody saw that coming, right? Nobody thought that they were going to create a big cloud.
Everybody saw that coming. Everybody told him this is wrong. Everyone
told him it was a bad idea, but no one knew it was going to just come and like tear the flesh from people's bones, kind of bad, right?
Yeah, but
I don't even like that they can do that. Like, that's actually one of my points. It's way down because my points are in the order that they happen in the story. Because reading thought right down a bullet point. But like, I actually really do not like how the spirits can do that. That's like, and to have like no way to stop them, shy of being like, oh, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, right? That's fucking terrible, because it's just everything needs to have, I don't know how to word this. It just sucks because there's nothing you can do to stop that, which is, to me, that's fucking terrible. Why would like some spiritual force not just completely wipe out whatever it wants? Like, there's no recourse.
Yeah, I really got aggravated when what was the Firebreather's name in his empire? The one his teacher.
From actual Avatar?
Yeah, it was like Spirit. No. The one who created the ghost device that he could suck up the spirits.
His alchemist teacher or whatever.
Yeah. He warned him repeatedly not to do this.
Serves the Flame was his slave, that's right.
Yeah, he warned him repeatedly that this is horrible. If it does work, don't do it. And then Hammer was constantly telling him not to do it, and then he did it anyway, and it led to the deaths of his 2 soldiers. I clipped this part right here. Pike was a captain. He couldn't let himself cry over dead soldiers. They knew what they were getting into when they enlisted in the military. Which is so fucking callous and heartless, and after watching them literally just have their souls ripped out of their fucking body because of a decision he made, which he was warned against.
It is callous, but that is also the thinking that military societies have to do. That's why military societies are bad.
Yeah.
Ask anybody in the military and they'll tell you that, yes, that's the way officers have to think, and it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and then just a little while later, this quote, "There has to be something we can do." Pike stomped his foot in frustration. This couldn't be happening. He would not be the arrogant son that tore down the Empire. I really hoped he would have. I really wanted him to, like, oh, we got to get back to and just eliminate the Iron Empire entirely because they're all fucking assholes. Absolutely could not stand Pike. And every interaction he had with anyone else just made me more aggravated. And made me, constantly like breathe a sigh of relief whenever I saw Ash at the top of the chapter list.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with you a little bit. Again, I didn't like the Pike chapters that much either. I didn't like Pike at this point in his development. I understand he's going to get better because I've seen Avatar: Last Airbender, you haven't. I understand he's the Zuko character and he's going to eventually become likable. But I wouldn't say it was as bad as you're making out to be. Just me personally. Like, I understood a lot of the reasons why he did what he did. They may be bad reasons, but, like, I understood them.
Yeah, Venter in the Discord says, "Oh, Bantam hasn't seen Avatar: The Last Airbender." No, and I'll tell you my actual reasons I haven't seen it, and it's a stupid reason, and I acknowledge that it's a stupid reason. It has been shoved down my throat by everybody I've ever known, and I've seen so many memes and so many, like, the Avatar fandom invades in places they don't belong. Like, I could be on a car forum and someone's like, "Oh my god, it's almost like when Zuko," and then people start talking about Avatar. When something gets popular enough that I'm hearing about it everywhere, and have you seen the newest episode, and have you seen season blah, 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 I start to loathe the media that they're referring to. It's why I never watched Game of Thrones. It's why I didn't watch Breaking Bad until 5 years after the show ended.
Bantam's a fucking hipster is what he is.
It's you know what? It's not a hipster because I want to be cool and not know these things. It's because eventually, if I finally break down and start watching it, I feel like I'm watching it out of just to get people to leave me the fuck alone, which is never a good mindset to go into when you're trying to consume new media. It's like, if I'm going to watch a show, I want it to be my idea. Or at least not be drowning in a tidal wave of fanboys telling me that this is God's gift to man, and that if I don't like it, I'm wrong. I know so much about the show through memes and people talking about the characters that I honestly feel like I have seen the show. I know that whatever, I'm not going to get into it, but yeah.
We don't need to get into it, just understand you're wrong.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But yeah, that's just to say that I know what Pike's arc is going to be, and you're not supposed to like him at this stage. So it's forgiven from a writing standpoint. Like, it probably could have been done slightly better, just because, for someone that hasn't seen ATLA, you just had nothing but hatred towards him. So there could have been a few more nuggets early on to make you, like, be willing to stick it out with him. Because, like, if there was no Ash point of view, you would have put the book down and been like, I can't fucking stand this main character. Like, this point of view fucking sucks. So there should have been a few more nuggets of golden moments or whatever.
Yeah, I will say that Pike's inclusion in the book made me like Ash more. The only reason I didn't like the thing that took points away from Ash was toward the end of the book when he was like basically being like Golden Jesus and like forgiving everybody and going, oh no,
dude, oh my God. It's so weird that we're starting at the end of the book because I fucking hated that too. That was
it was so, turn the other cheek. Oh no, I will forgive you, and I love you. And it's like, dude, rip her fucking. So toward the end of the book, when Widgeon, Elder Widgeon, who is cartoonishly fucking just evil, and toward the end of the book, there's a confrontation, and Ash is like, I forgive you, like whatever, and she's like, rah, and goes off into the woods to be evil. And I'm like, no, go for her throat. Tear her throat out and kill her. Show her that behavior will not be tolerated.
I mean, I told the author this himself because I was talking to him while I was reading through the book. But, like, if it was me, if I had written this, I would have had Ash burn down that village. When he comes back to the village during the spirit storm or whatever, and Widgeon has managed to turn everybody against him, and they've already banished his mother because she harbored outsiders, therefore she is evil too, so we banished her. And so she's not there, and for all you know, she's fucking dead, because this is before you saw her at the spirit shrine. So as far as all you know, she's fucking dead because you guys kicked her out, and now this giant, like, soul-sucking storm is here. And everyone's like, yeah, it's all your fault. It's
which they blamed on him with zero evidence.
It's like, at that point, I would have just had Ash burn the fucking town down. No one there is on his side anymore. It's goodbye. Just burn it all to the ground.
Well, they can't do that because that would perpetuate the oh god, all the fire breathers are terrorists.
Yeah. Okay. So first off, I like corruption stories, so I enjoy when when the heroes have moments of darkness, or even just give into the darkness entirely. But I also think that would be a, how to word this, not necessarily a turning point for him, but definitely like he was such a goody two shoes throughout the entire book that having like one or two moments of him snapping like that, I feel like would have done good for his development in the long run. Like, I don't know how many books he plans on this series being, but that definitely could be like he does that. It's a fit of rage, a fit of anger, a fit of passion, which are all attributes people usually give to fire, like very passionate about a lot of things. And so that could totally be something that he then struggles with, like he regrets doing that throughout book 2 or book 3, and then has to come to terms with it and like or whatever, right? I just think that would have been a bit more of a dynamic character for him if he had that one stumble point, and or it could have just simply been nothing but cathartic. Like,
Yeah.
It would have been really cathartic from a reader standpoint if your main character hero, who is actually really good and is gonna like save the day, free all the slaves from Iron Keeper lands, bring back the fire breathers and whatnot. It could have been cathartic if he has a moment of like, I'm just gonna burn down this fucking town of racists to the ground, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's the one last point I have on this topic was this other thing I clipped here, and it says so after toward the very end of the book, when Ash is in the village and there's this giant storm of evil spirits bearing down or whatever, and Ash basically is splitting his old village in half. Some of the elders take his side, some of the elders, including Widgeon and Reed, hate his guts. And then when Ash, turns into golden fucking Jesus, Reed finally has a change of heart. And so I clipped this part, and it says, Reed, Widgeon breathed, her eyes wide with horror. And then Reed says, I've been a fool to follow you for so long. I always knew deep down that your conservative ways of thinking would doom us all, but I've been too scared to stand up to you. That changes now. It should have changed a long time ago, but I suppose a lesson learned late is better than never learned at all. No, fuck you. You turned tail because you saw your side was on the losing side, and you're like, oh shit, I'm going to be on your side. Fuck you, both of you get killed.
Yes, it definitely came across as him just flip-flopping onto whatever side had the most support at the time.
Yeah.
Which is why I would not have minded him getting killed off in the whole Ash burns the town down kind of setting.
Yeah, scenario. It was because that was after imagine like 50 dragons on one side and 50 on the other, 2 elders on each side or whatever, and it was like Ash said some stuff, and then a bunch of dragons from the bad side started wandering over to the good side. And it's like, oh, now that you see that you are on the losing side, you're like, fucking Starscream bitch. Kill Reed and kill Widgeon. Oh, God, I've never wanted something dead so hard. I mean, I also wanted Pike dead, but I will say that I do really like the Iron Scales as a concept. I don't like their slavery. But I like the fact that they...
I'm going to have to put a pin in that. I'm going to have to argue in favor of slavery, and it's going to be hilarious without a context, but keep going.
I like the concept of dragons that don't have wings, so they can't, just fly away and get away. They have to armor up. And that we mentioned in the last episode that if I were any of the dragons in this, I'd want to be Iron Scale because I would love the concept of, having custom made armor for myself where I'm just basically, I would end up looking, I guess, like a medieval mecha dragon, I love that shit.
Dragon Space Marines.
Dragon Space Marines, yeah. Love that. I love big heavy armor. Like, I mean, every Dark Souls game I've ever played with Ray, I always try to go for the heaviest armor with the biggest weapon, so... Havel the Rock. I would look like a dragon version of Havel the Rock. There you go.
God, since in the context of the show, you're my rider, I'm just having to carry a big lug of metal on my back at all times, huh?
Yep, solid stone. Solid stone with, like, chains and iron. Yeah, that Havel's armor was made of stone. But I mean, like...
carrying a big chunk of stone around.
Yeah, it's armor plates made of stone, linked together with iron plates.
Yeah. God, there's so many topics to branch out into. I want to say real fast that this is actually kind of difficult for me to review because this is supposed to be for kids. And it's weird because Wings of Fire is also supposed to be for kids, which is the age group inspiration for this book too. So if they're both going for the same audience, but like Wings of Fire, I'm like, no, I'm gonna tear it apart because the world building is bad for this reason, that reason, or whatever. But then like this book, I'm trying to like put my little kid gloves on, like, no, but it's okay because kids need to have things spelled out to them. It's like I feel like if I would have tried to write a kid's book, it would be just as, I don't want to say bad as this, but just as like blunt and just as toned down and obvious as this, like overly simplified. Because I wouldn't know how to write for kids. I would assume that they're dumber than they actually are.
No,
But like for that reason, it's hard for me to review this thing because I'm like, I really dislike how this is handled, but I understand it's for kids and so it had to be that way. It's like,
no. All right, so when I was a kid, I'd say probably around 11, 12 years old, when I was, still in school and I was forced to read books, which ended up making me hate them. But I started looking for books on my own. I started finding books that I wanted to read. I started reading Choose Your Own Adventure D&D books. I still have them on my shelf. But then I started grabbing books that looked interesting to me. I don't know if I think I mentioned it once or twice on the show before, but I had a book called Dream Snake. And the concept was it was a medicinal healer woman who had a pet viper that she would fill its fangs with medicine, and then she would have sex with you, and while you're distracted, the snake would bite you and inject you with the medicine.
Because that's how snakes work.
That is exactly how snakes work, apparently. But the point is that I was like 12 years old. I loved that book. I started reading other, big novels, stuff that was like, Shadowrun novels, Battletech novels. I wanted to consume this media. Maybe there was a couple references in the books I didn't quite get, but you don't need to treat children like they're morons. They don't need to be talked down to.
Anonymous in our Discord just says, stop treating kids like complete idiots. I'm like, no, but they are complete idiots, though.
They're not. Well, you know what? If a kid reads a passage in a book and doesn't get it and then puts the book down, whatever, who cares? But to me, it's the same thing as like you see those jokes where kids can't pay attention to a video unless Subway Surfers is playing in the background. And it's like, kids are getting dumber. And it's like, don't cater to that. Try to push that. Push further. Make them work for it. If I wrote a kid's book, I mean, obviously I'm not going to just have, a character who just constantly swears and fucks everything in existence. But
I feel like we also have to make a few definitions here. When I'm thinking kids book, I'm also thinking of like for 8 years old, right? You said when you were 12, you were looking for ABC. To me, that's young adult. That's not kid as far as book categories
I feel like
go.
Kids around 8 years old aren't making choices on the books they want to read. Their parents are just getting the classics. They're getting Curious George and Mickey Mouse books. They're not...
Yeah, and that's usually, if the parents are making the choice, that's usually why you also write them trying to be as inoffensive as possible and as black and white as, oh, look, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy, because you're trying to appeal to the parents who don't know what the kids actually want. When a kid starts picking his own books, he usually goes for stuff above his grade level like I did, and that's when they start going into the young adult section rather than the kids section.
I just think that, like, if this book is targeting, like, 8-year-olds or whatever, a parent's gonna look at a book with a dragon on it or look at a book with, like,
oh,
Oscar
look, my
the
kid likes dragons.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't mean for any of this to be, like, insulting. It's just... it aggravated the crap out of me because to me it felt like giving a 12-year-old child, a single crayon and a big circle and go and color it. And it's like, that's not stimulating to them.
Yeah,
this is dumb. This is dumbing down this poor kid. Give them something challenging, give Pike nuance. Have Pike actually, like, go against the wishes of his father, or have moments where he goes, is this really worth getting a half name? And then have Ash have moments of weakness where he does want to kill or does kill. I don't feel like everything needs to be cookie cutter smooth, whatever. I mean, even Last Airbender, I haven't seen the show, but I do know there's some fucked up shit in that show. And it's like, you strip all that out and then you got this book. Like,
again, you said earlier in your rant right now that you said 12-year-old kid. I'm like, no, but I'm imagining 8-year-old kid. We have different age groups in our brain here.
I don't really think that children below 10 exist. They just spontaneously pop into existence at like 10 years old. Thing is I guess I'm just thinking about when I was a kid. You know, when I was a kid,
Did you spontaneously come into being at 12 years old?
no, but that's when I started reading. Like when I started reading stuff I wanted to read. You know, you go to school and they're like, "Oh, you're going to read To Kill a Mockingbird," and I'm like, "Why? This sucks." And you know, when my teacher was like, "Hey, we want you to do a book report, but it can be on any book you want," and I did a book report on a book called King Snake, which was a book about a literal king snake, a feral snake that was narrating basically what it was doing. It was like a first-person novel about the dangers and life of a king snake.
That sounds like a Blind Blue book, honestly.
I don't remember who wrote it. I didn't even have the cover. It was one of those hardcover books with a sleeve, but the sleeve was destroyed. I just remember it was called King Snake. And I loved that book. And, I mean, I started reading books about snakes. I mean, that's where I wanted to go. But point is that I was able to make my own decisions, and I jumped straight to adult books. Just straight up adult books. Because adult books aren't trying to be edgy or cruel or violent. They're just books. It's when you take, you know, a 10 and then strip out 4 points of it to make it appealing to children. And that's what aggravates me, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying. And I don't want to go too deep into an argument like what counts as a kid's book, whatever. But I guess suffice to say that I believe that these dumbed down books are for, you know, the 8-year-old kids that aren't really picking their own stuff yet or whatever. And once they graduate mentally into the I'm going to start reading young adult stuff, that's usually when you can get spicy, I guess. Convoluted.
Yeah.
Nuanced, as you put it.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, so I guess let's talk about the different cultures real fast, just because going back to Iron Keeper, since you said you liked Iron Keepers, and I'm like, well, Ray's going to have to put his defending slavery hat on now. Right?
In the context of the book.
So I'm going to get clipped out of context. It's going to be hilarious. It's kind of funny because I do the same thing in the game I played, Dungeons & Dragons, on Tuesday. It's actually Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which is better than D&D, anyone who's listening. But in that game, I play a dragon who is absolutely pro-slavery. And it's kind of funny because the party and the DM are all on board because we're actually playing as villains. And so everyone's okay with what I'm saying and stuff, but it's hilarious out of context because there's people in my house with me that don't know what's going on. And they'll just hear me say the most unhinged, like, pro-slavery, pro-classes and things. And it's funny as shit. But anyway, yes, understand. In the context of fantasy writing, slavery's kind of fun, right? It's fun to have your big, scary empires that have slaves and all that. Especially with dragons. And it's kind of weird, because in this setting, everybody's dragons. So it's dragons having dragon slaves. But like dragons specifically, them having slaves, it's kind of just bread and butter for the dragon archetype. People would argue that that's bad and nice to change. And you know what? Then go ahead and write your book where your dragons are not slavers. But from a conventional, D&D has shifted everyone's opinion of dragons, not of slavery. D&D has shifted everyone's opinion of dragons, and so when people think of dragon, they usually think of one from that setting. It's kind of just become the default. Dragons generally have underlings that they don't treat very well. Sometimes it's kobolds, sometimes it's humans, sometimes it's whatever, and they usually ask for tribute. It's just, in a fantasy book, especially with dragons, slavery is one of the things that I think they need to have. Like, it's just part of the I can't think of the word, the getup.
Would it be because dragons have, like, usually big claws or big hands and they can't do finer work?
That's part of it. It's also just part of I enjoy dragons that are vastly superior to everyone else around them. I just respect that level of, like, power and authority and control and whatnot. And it's reflected in the stuff that I enjoy reading, because I tend to also enjoy the power fantasies where there's this really strong character who's nothing can stop him, and so he's going to just inflict whatever changes he wants upon the world and no one can do anything about it, right? I like those kind of stories better, because in the real world, I am very powerless and do nothing to change things the way that I want. It's fun to, like, read that, to read somebody who can. And so because of that, it's just a way to show off the power dynamic that, look at all these little people, they can do nothing to stand up against the dragon. And so they are obviously inferior to him. I mean, I've had this discussion with one of our friends. I don't know if she wants me to use her name. One of our friends that we play games and stuff with all the time. She is, like, the most, like, politically minded person in real life, right? But she acknowledges in fantasy, that stuff like racism actually makes sense in fantasy, because in fantasy, when you're dealing with things like dwarves, elves, dragonborn, kobolds, lizardmen, whatever, that there are actual, literal, physical differences between these people. Not everyone is created equal in this setting. There are things that character A can do that character B cannot, that it is okay to make judgments based off of that. The brain of a lizardman and the brain of a dwarf are actually made differently. They think differently, they look at the world differently, and so it's okay to like have characters respond to that. So it's in that same similar vein that there are actual literal differences in ability between a squishy little human that lives for like 70 years in this setting versus this massive dragon with impenetrable scales, innate magical power, can destroy a village with just like a sneeze if it's not careful, right? Fire breath and all that. That lives for thousands of years if it has a natural lifespan at all, right? And so in that kind of setting, usually having the lesser beings serve the greater beings just kind of comes naturally and kind of helps to elevate the greater being in that setting, which is why I'm whatever. That's one heck of a rant that I feel like went nowhere.
Yeah, but it makes sense. I get you.
Yeah. So as far as the Iron Keepers having slaves, it's like they're still dragon slaves, and I don't like how they treat them. The whole cutting off the wings thing makes me go, but I understand it from a cultural standpoint. I feel like it is a good way to show the Empire as this big scary empire face, right?
So here's one thing that confused me about this. And I correct me if I'm wrong. So this Iron Empire has taken over. Essentially, everybody understands that they're warmongering and that they've, blah, blah, blah. They've taken slaves. What the hell do they do to fight? They don't have breath. They don't have... They've never been shown
described as being the inventive ones, and so I'm assuming they might actually have, like, guns and cannons and that kind of stuff. We haven't really seen them fight anything yet, and it's kind of weird because if they do, in fact, have guns and cannons and bombs, you would think that they would have shown that, like the soldiers that went
that's
with
the thing.
Pike when they went to tally the villages, that they would have had cannonades with them or whatever.
Yeah, I understand, like, the Discord's like, oh, the bombs. I understand that they had bombs. That's fine. They have airships and they can drop bombs. But the foot soldiers on the ground are never described as having any weapons. And so you can't really win a war by just bombing everything into oblivion and then taking off. Like, because there's always going to be survivors and they're always going to fight back. Why would any of the other races want to serve them, like the Shadow?
Well, nobody wants to serve them.
But, like, point is that it seems like the, is it Shadestalkers? All these names blend together for me. Shadestalkers. The Shadestalkers are, like, assassins for the Empire, but then when the fucking prince shows up at the thing, one of them, like, threatens him by, like, firing a barb at his ship, and, like, they don't even respect them, and it's like, well, then fight back. Like, go to kill them. Kill the Iron Scales. They, aside from having bombs in their ships, they don't have any swords. They don't have any guns. They're never shown as having any form of weapon except armor. And the fire breathers can just melt that onto them and kill them. Yeah, so it's like
Phantom. This is like Animus magic from Wings of Fire. You're not supposed to think about it too hard.
Well, here's another thing I thought about too hard then, and you said you were going to refute this.
It's another crux of it being, quote, a kid's book.
Yeah. So, early on in the book, after the whole crux of the book is that Pike is looking for his half-name, ends up doing a routine mission and discovers Ash. And Ash is part of the Fire Breathers, which are, according to him, terrorists. So he wants to capture him and bring him back home and have him basically have his wings cut off and made a slave. And that'll get him his half-name for sure, because he found a fucking fugitive, which I doubt. But at any rate, Ash ends up burning himself free and escapes through the Bombay doors of the Hornet and flies off. The Hornet goes down, and he ends up, in the swamp and trudging around, and then he ends up getting healed in some spiritual pool by Hammer, and then they end up marching some more. And so here's what I wrote, word for word. Pike absolutely could not keep up with Ash. Ash could fly, Pike was injured, and they're trudging on the ground in heavy suits of armor. Them meeting up on the mountain is fucking preposterous. Even by boat. I want an explanation from somebody as to how the fuck they met up, because Ash was way the fuck ahead of him.
Okay,
miles
so,
and miles and miles.
So I think this is a problem of you reading a bit too fast. They didn't walk. So Pike and Hammer did not walk all the way to the mountain. They walked.
No, they walked to a boat, but then the boat took them, whatever. But a boat is still not as fast as a dragon fucking flying.
The boat eventually got to another base where they commandeered another airship.
I still think that all this point A to point B to point C to point D, whereas Ash could just go straight from A to F. And
maybe, but Ash and Albuquerque also spent, I think, like a couple of days in the town before Scout took them up to the palace. I don't know. We could probably timeline this out, and it probably doesn't add up. And yes, this is absolutely another don't think about it too hard thing. Not to rag on DM Gilmore, but he definitely didn't put too much thought into a lot of the minutia in this book. Again, because it's a kid's book, you don't have to, right? Little kid gloves. It's a kid's book. Right?
I think there, and to be completely fair to DM Gilmore, and this is my failing, I am just hyper attuned to those things because it always aggravates the piss out of me in a video game when, you as the main character make all these advancements and the bad guys are just like right there every single time. Like, you could destroy their whole base, you could blow up every one of their vehicles, and they still manage to be one step ahead of you, and it aggravates the crap out of me. And I always want what I'm watching to explain to me how this is possible.
No,
how did you guys get here before me? I literally broke both your legs and left you in the desert. How did you get here?
The author decreed it so.
Yeah, and I hate that.
No, I agree. From what we have seen so far, there is absolutely no way at all the Iron Keepers can be the big bad in a world like this. They don't, at this point in time, and I'll get into more of that later, they do not seem to have any special abilities, no inherent magic, element bending, let's just call it that. There's no reason that they should have been able to take out the Firebreathers or subjugate any of the villages nearby. They have done nothing has been shown to me in the book that says that this is realistic.
Yeah. I mean, they have said...
I have not read the prequel. I understand that the Fire Capital was bombed, but I still think that it is stupid as heck to kill off the species that can control fire with fire bombs. The fact that the capital city burned to the ground does not make sense with the species that can control fire.
Yeah, that is true. It's funny because the Cloud Seekers live in floating islands and have stated that that they can just move storms around and that the Iron Empire can't really get to them because the storms are always buffeting their ships. So it's like the Cloud Seekers are basically just off in the distance like, yeah, try it, motherfucker. And so it's like they don't even respect the...
I don't think the Earthshapers have been shown to control Earth. Like, earthbending style, right?
I'm talking about the Cloud Seekers.
I know, I'm just thinking out loud. So, Iron Keepers subjugating Earth Shapers makes a little bit more sense. But, again, this is something to where, like, you see this one faction is getting too big for their britches, and they're starting to, like, actually enslave other people and cut off their wings and other, like, mutilative things. And it's like, you would think that they would step in to stop that? But I don't know, maybe the politics between different species is like, we don't want to deal with it because we hate all of you.
The Earthshapers were basically so sidelined in this entire book as a species that like they may as well have just been cows.
Poor Clay.
Well, because they were mentioned many times as like, oh, and I passed over, and they're just working the fields and doing menial labor. It's like there weren't any important characters that were Earthshapers.
Yeah, I feel like eventually there should be one, especially if he's going to follow the Avatar formula where he gets a friend from every single tribe, right? He's definitely going to get an Earthshaper shaman on his side. That's going to teach him how to interact with spirits a bit more. That seems to be the path that he's on. I mean, he's flat out ends the book saying he's going to go to Earthshaper lands to try and find his other aunt, right? Yeah. So they're definitely they're going to find the Toph, definitely, for sure. But, like, so far, there are definitely a lot of, like, holes. Like, I don't understand, like, why this is going on. Why the Iron Keepers are allowed to get as big and bad as they have been. Venter will laugh if it's a blind dragon. The Toph character, to be different, he's going to make them deaf instead.
Yeah. So if the thing is that I pride myself on not holding back. If I didn't like something, I'm going to say so. I don't want to, someone comes to us and goes, hey, can you read our book and review it for the podcast? I don't want to just be like, oh my God, it was the best book I ever read, 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone go read it, because that's not accurate. I didn't like this book. That doesn't mean that you won't. I always want to stress that everyone should definitely read everything that we've done so that you can follow along with us and also tell me if I'm wrong or tell me that I'm being too cruel or whatever. But the thing with this book is that I felt like it felt like a rough draft. While I was reading it, I was like, is this a first pass? Like, before it gets punched up, or I'd read a paragraph and go, oh, that could easily be split into 5 paragraphs.
Yeah,
by punching it up.
I had that exact thought. I think I brought that up in the first half when we recorded a week ago. I would not call it a rough draft. We have read other stuff that has felt rough drafty, but it definitely feels
like
this
a first draft.
Yeah, this definitely feels like it was first draft. And again, that comes down to the whole, but it's a kid's book. It's got to be dumbed down this way, right?
Yeah, I don't subscribe to the it's a kid's book defense ever for anything.
But definitely, I feel like other authors that we've read could have definitely made like each paragraph be like 3 paragraphs, right? And that could be good or bad. There have definitely been authors we've read where they spend way too long describing the most inane things. Like the last book we reviewed before this one, it's actually 2 books ago. The last one was the Scales and Spells erotica one. But before that, the one that I said, this is the best Dragon Shifter I've ever read, the Claws Out with the character Nico Sandumis. That author had a really, really bad time trying to over-describe terrain. There would be times when Nico would go to like a new city and he spends way too long describing what the city looks like. There was at one point, the one that stands out of my head was Nico was flying to a mountain fort or something to fight off some giants. And there was like 4 paragraphs of him being like just how like pristine the snow was, and the mountains and trees were like claws reaching up into the sky, and the ivory this and the what, like trying to be very overly dramatic and very overly pretty with the description of the terrain. Like, I don't fucking care about the terrain.
It was the helicopter or drone panning shot when they change scenes in a movie.
Yeah. That author also had a really bad habit of being a little too into describing the fighting scenes, like trying to make sure you understood the choreography of what was happening in this fight. And it's like, that's not really necessary for a book. You don't need to be so like specific on the movements in a book. You can kind of leave that up to the person's imagination. I don't like fighting scenes in books. A quick little one here or there just to show how powerful a character is, sure, that's fine. But to have like a long, drawn out, like Dragon Ball Z style fighting scene, it's like, it doesn't really work for a book. But so that all that is to say that yes, there are different writing styles that could have definitely stretched this book longer, and that could be good or bad depending on what you look for.
Yeah, it to me it felt like things moved way too quickly, and things that I wanted explained weren't, and things that I didn't want explained were just like everything moved like at blinding speed for me.
Yeah. It definitely felt like
dialogue,
you had a checklist of things I need to do to make this an ATLA with dragons, and it was just going bam, 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 bam through the checklist.
Yeah, and that's why when I first started reading it, I was like, is this a first draft or a rough draft or whatever? Because to me, it felt like there could have been lots of places where there was more detail and tons of places where there'd be more character growth. Pike could have used a lot of work, in my opinion. If it were me, I would have made Pike a little bit more sympathetic of a character. Like maybe his siblings actually beat the shit out of him and threaten to kill him or try to kill him several times because he's useless and doesn't have a half name, and that he doesn't know anything about military because he spends all his time in books. Maybe give him an actual threat. If I don't get my half name, I'm probably not going to survive to the next year. Like... They just, his brother is just like, oh, it's you, what's up, and then leaves, and then his sister's like, man, I hate you, and you're annoying, get the fuck out, and then she leaves, and that's the most interaction we ever have with his family.
Yeah.
And it's like, you getting your half name isn't going to change the way your siblings look at you or treat you, so show me why that will change. Give me a little bit more time with Pike and his empire, and with his friends and subordinates or whatever. Because then maybe I'll actually be rooting for you to get your fucking half name instead of rooting for you to be killed.
Yeah, for someone that has seen ATLA, to me it definitely was this is my Zuko character, therefore I need him to have this big honor stick that he's got to care about and go for, right? Again, just another check mark on the list of ATLA tie-ins. That's what it felt like to me. Which is like, that's why he needs the half name so bad. He needs to have a reason to restore his honor or whatever. That's definitely what it felt like.
Is that honor stick up his ass?
Yes, absolutely. For the in Avatar, for the first like 75% of the show, I swear to God.
But yeah, I will say that when I was done reading the book, I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. It would have been probably a point or two higher if Pike wasn't such an insufferable asshole. And if I didn't... Everything he ever did, it just felt like, there's a big red button that says, do not push or terrible things will happen. And he's like, but I want my half name, pushes the button. And then, oh no, how could this happen? This is bullshit. I want my half name. And it's like, I cannot take you seriously as a character, and I want nothing but terrible things to happen to you. Like, I got my start, I've mentioned this once or twice before, I've gotten my start in writing because I watched a movie that ended so poorly, in my opinion, that I ended up rewriting the ending. And this is definitely something that would have done that to me. Where I'd be like, oh, okay, hold on. Pike needs to fucking die. Maybe the fucking Iron Keeper's empire does need a giant swarm of invincible bullshit fucking spirits that suck your soul out. Because then they'd have gotten cathartic revenge for being genocided. That would have been actually a good story point. But I understand that
to be the point of I can't formulate my sentences today. The Avatar: The Last Airbender bingo card node for this is Pike is going to become the Emperor. He's going to succeed his father, possibly by killing him, and then he's going to end up reforming the entire society and being best friends with Ash, who's going to become king of the Fire Nation.
How would he do that when he has two siblings in line before him?
Probably kill them too. I don't know. The fact that so far the siblings have both been very, not quite there, not, as in crazy, but as in, barely mentioned in the book, and the only times they've been shown are to be a dick to Pike, and, they're very...
Tower Shield was okay, or is it Tower Steel?
Tower Steel.
Tower Steel was not that bad. He basically was like an annoyed older brother.
But they're still very one-dimensional characters that aren't very nice to Pike in their own way. Tower still may not pick on him in the same way that whatever the sister's name is, but he's still
Saberfang.
Yeah. The point being is the two siblings don't have a whole lot of depth to them, which makes it seem like they are primed for being written out at some point. They're gonna get killed off or banished somewhere or whatever.
Can I just say one quick little thing here, which is I really love the names in this book. They're all easy to remember.
For the most part.
I mean, I wrote down Ash, Pike, Hammer, Scout, and Albuca. Those are the only ones I wrote down. But I'm remembering all the other ones.
Cloud Seekers are just Argonians.
Huh?
The Cloud Seekers are just Argonian
names. I love that naming scheme.
Scales of Jade.
Yep. I'd probably just be a Cloud Seeker. Fuck it.
I think I'd be a fire breather still. I don't know.
I need more information. Scale that can breathe fire and has the naming scheme of a Cloud Seeker.
You know what? I was going to just go in order down my list, but fuck that. We're just going to jump all over the place. So, last half episode, whatever, I said that I had my conspiracy board behind me on whose element is really what and that kind of stuff, right? It's not as black and white as we believe, right? So, this is going to be one heck of a tangent-y rant, whatever, right? So we think we have our normal elements of fire, water, earth, and air, right? The initial thought going into is Cloud Seekers are air because cloud, right? Turns out that they are a bit more just water. They can make clouds by vaporizing the water inside them, the same way that Ash can create warmth or whatever by burning the air inside him with his fire. This fire needs oxygen, you can use the oxygen that's inside you, right? That's an interesting take on it. I wouldn't say it's weird. It's an interesting take. But so the Cloud Seekers are water, the Fire Breathers are fire. You would think the Shade Stalkers are shadow or darkness or whatever. I think they're actually wood element. They are described as having very tree branch-like horns or antlers or whatever, and very leaf-like manes or fringes.
Yeah.
And with them living in not necessarily does he
jungly forest
or a swamp?
Yeah, a little bit of all of those.
Whatever. Point being is that I believe that they're supposed to be basically wood elements, right? I'm waiting for Albuca to suddenly wake his wood bending power and control a tree, right? That's probably not going to actually happen, because if I understand correctly, the author DM Gilmore did not create these benders all equally, in the sense that they can't all control an element the same way that the fire breathers can. The Shade Stalker's ability was supposed to be more on like perception, kind of like how the Earth Shapers seem to also be perception based. Like they can see spirit energy, though they may not necessarily be able to bend Earth, as it were. The Shade Stalkers can sense the spiritual energy or whatever, in the sense that they can tell when they're being watched, which just feels like a much weaker version of what the Earth Shapers have, honestly. So they may not actually start like bending wood, but the reason I think they're supposed to be wood elemented anyway, just because of how they look, is if we understand, if we believe that Iron Keepers are supposed to be metal element, because they're wearing fucking metal and they're called Iron Keepers, right? That definitely
and their city is made of metal, and
that's definitely the wuxia. I think that's what it's called, the wuxia element tree, which is 6 elements: fire, water, earth, air, wood, and metal. Those are the 6 elements in that setting. And so there we have wood and metal. Then
which would leave what?
That just leaves air. If Cloudseeker's the water, that just leaves air. But then, so yeah, I'm also waiting for Pike to just unlock his metal bending and just like, oh, powerful, right? So that's like my first level of conspiracy board, that those are supposed to be like the wood and metal elements hiding there, whatever. My next level, my second tier of conspiracy theory, going all out, like full on crazy level, right? That it turns out that the fire breathers don't control fire, like their element is actually something like dumb like love, because that's where freaking Ash is getting all his power from, is whenever he thinks about people he cares about and he feels the love, that's when his powers get much stronger, so strong that they can keep all the evil spirits at bay, and he can like not, what's the opposite of corrupt? Purify. And he can purify them, is when he's like focusing on love and all that, right? So it turns out fire is the element of love. That's how they could get killed by fire bombs. They can't actually control fire. It's brilliant, right?
Yeah.
And then like to go like even crazier, like I think that instead of the Iron Keepers being metal elements, right? This is where it gets really crazy. I think the Iron Keepers are actually the air element. And like it's so weird, because they have not been shown to have any powers whatsoever, right? And they've always been said they had to be inventive. That's why they build things in the forges and all that, is because they had to create stuff to make up for their shortcomings. One of the very first things that we hear about the Iron Keeper Society is that their air is poisoned. That it is like, it's killing them slowly because of the pollution and all that. Hack, cough, cough. At least I live where the air is slightly cleaner, right? And when he gets cured by the spirit spring, the first thing that happens is he spits out this like sludge, and he's able to breathe easier. He no longer has the rasp and whatever, right?
And Hammer is also white, which because their scales get stained.
Mm-hmm. So I think that they're supposed to be air element, and then something happened in their past that caused them to basically poison themselves. They have ruined their own air quality with their machines, that has then caused them to like lose their elemental tie-in or whatever. It also kind of, to me, like conspiracy board here, that's also why it's such a big deal that they don't have wings anymore. They have, again, poisoned themselves to the point that their wings are shriveled and weak, and they either don't get born with it, or they are completely useless appendages at this point that they have to get them cut off. It also is why the Emperor there's this whole cultural thing about how no one can have wings, because if the Emperor can fly and no one else can. There's a lot of importance going on with the wings and being able to fly and not being able to fly, right? So they and somewhere in their past, they poisoned their own air supply, basically, which like corrupts their elemental core or some bullshit like that, and caused them to lose the ability to fly because they're no longer in tune with their element, right?
I actually dig it. I am, you know what? I'm going to put the hat on, and I'm going to come over
to my side.
Yeah, because that actually sounds pretty believable.
And if it's not, it just shows that I'm brilliant.
Yeah.
So yeah, my new crackpot theory is that the Iron Keepers are actually the air element. I don't know if I'm going to go full crackpot with fire breathers are actually the love element. That's silly. I think it's just trying to, again, it's a kid's book, trying to just show that the true power all along is love and friendship, rather than any sort of like ambition or whatever, right?
That's when Ash lost a couple points for me.
Yeah. So
This
he
whole
probably is just flat out fire element still.
turn the other cheek, turn the other cheek, turn the other cheek. I love you. I forgive you. Fuck that.
I love you.
Like, your entire species got bombed into oblivion. You got to see your dad or your grandfather as a fucking mummified skeleton that crumbled to dust. And it's like, no. At that point, all bets are off. It's time for murder.
Yeah, again, that's why I wanted him to have a couple points where, like, he burns down the Shadekeeper village, right? It needs to be a couple of points where he, like, lets it out. Especially if you, I don't know. I already went over that. We don't need to, like, retread it. Only real problem with my Iron Keepers are air element is that, assuming he wants to follow the Wuxia element tree, that means we need to have a metal element somewhere else, right? Because I still think the Shadestalkers are wood. If Shadestalkers element was not wood, and it was supposed to be shadow or darkness or whatever, because, let's face it, they live in the shadows, they're stealthy, they're sneaky, they're assassins, they're whatever, then I feel like if there was going to be the main four elements, air, earth, fire, water, which we would have, plus the shadow stalkers being shadow or dark, I feel like there needs to be a light element hiding somewhere just to, like, mirror the shadow. So either way, there's a sixth dragon tribe hiding somewhere. I also gotta say, it's, like, a little trippy, some of the choices in this book, like the shadow stalkers being, or shade stalkers being, they live in a swamp, and they're very assassin-oriented. It's a little weird, because it's actually, like, really close to some of the stuff that I came up with in high school. I have this magical dragon world sitting in the back of my mind that I want to eventually write a book for. I say that for everything, I understand that, but this is one that's definitely gonna, like, wait a bit longer. Like, if I could get magical ADHD medication that made me focus, and I could get a book written in, like, 3 weeks, right? If I could, like, do that, there would still be many other things I'd want to write first for the sake of practice, because this idea from high school in the back of my head is, like, it's such a big deal to me that I want to make sure it is, like, my magnum opus, the best thing that I could do. So I would want to practice other stuff first. But the idea that has been sitting there and growing and changing over the last, like, 10, 15 years was very element-oriented. There were different species of draconian, I call them that, kind of based off the draconians from Dragonlance. There was very element-oriented. There was the fire ones. There was the ice ones. Ice ones are called Artisans. Very clever. Ha ha ha. There was, like, the lightning ones. Then I had two that were supposed to be the life and death elements, right? It's kind of what they were portrayed as. The life ones were the green-colored ones. They lived in a jungle. They didn't really age, so they were immortal because, life element, whatever. And in a D&D setting, they would be the ones that would always be the clerics and the healers and stuff, because that's just what they were, like, aligned with. Then the shadow ones, the death ones, whatever, they were the black dragons. They lived in a swamp, and they were assassins, right? They let everybody think that they were death elemented rather than shadow element or whatever, because they liked their reputation preceding them, and everyone was scared of them because, oh my god, look, it's the death dragons or whatever. It's just, there have been a couple of similarities that have made me go like, it's a little uncanny. Mr. Benton?
Yes.
You're usually weak to father-related things. Were you weak at all to the final scene where he gets to kind of talk to his father ghost?
Yes.
At the end?
Yeah. That actually made me tear up. Which is a low blow. Because I'm super weak to that stuff.
And he did specifically to target you.
You know what? Here's the thing. The way he did it was flawless. Because if the ghost could talk in any way, shape, or form...
That would be an exposition nightmare, if he could
That
talk.
would be an exposition nightmare, but it would also be really corny.
Mm-hmm.
It would feel like someone's like, okay, here's the part where you cry. And then, like, expecting it, But the fact that he couldn't communicate and, just had to use gestures and, nods and, whatever, that made it way more powerful, and I loved it.
Yeah. I believe after he gets taught by an Earth Shaper shaman to, like, interact with the spirit world a bit better, he probably will come back and be able to talk to his dad, yeah. It's like it's too soon to happen now, but it probably will happen because his dad did not dissipate like all the other spirits did. He's still hanging out there in the throne room waiting for him.
Yeah. But yeah, that to me was like, it kind of made me forgive a lot of the rest of the things that annoyed me because the ending of the book was so good.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm just trying to quick scan my bullet point notes. It's weird. When I take bullet point notes, they seem like good ideas at the time, but then it's like, no, that's really dumb to bring up. It's such like some of these notes are things that I would have told the author if I was like an alpha reader or an editor. Like for example, like this one here, there was a point where it's when Ash started flying like above the tree line at the kind of the early part, and the line was up here, so high above it all, the wind seemed to bend to his will. I left a note on that saying that is very cute, and I realize you're trying to be very poetic with your descriptions, but my personal opinion is you've already claimed that the fire breathers can literally control fire, kind of like Avatar style. So I feel like using these exact words to describe the feeling of him flying, the term the wind seemed to bend to his will, could come across as confusing because it could almost imply that he can control wind or air itself as well. So like that's definitely like something that should not normally be brought up right now because it's like such a minor point, who cares, but something that I would bring up with him if I was an alpha reader. So half my notes are useless because they're usually just small things like that. A lot of it being like, oh, this part is really heavy-handed, this part was really corny, this is like, you're being a little too obvious with the whole, this is a coming out story kind of thing, with the whole, like, I swear to God, it's the first line that Ash says out loud is looking at himself saying, I'm ugly. Right?
Yeah.
It's like that was a little heavy-handed.
When you introduce both of your characters as looking at themselves and hating themselves, it kind of makes it hard for the audience to give a shit about them. Because if the very first, like, think of it this way, if you're out and you're meeting new people, and the first person you meet is like, hey, well, I don't know why you'd want to be friends with me, I'm ugly and stupid and everyone hates me. I wouldn't want to continue talking to that person. I would walk away.
Ventus says it actually made him more attached to them. I'm like, well, I guess I'm too confident in myself.
You definitely are very confident in yourself.
Different people enjoy and respond to different things. That's why this is just our personal opinion and should not be taken like as gospel or anything, even though you should listen to me all the time. But yeah, that's also why I don't mind being a little harsh in my reviews sometimes, because I hope everyone understands that this is my opinion. I've already admitted many times that I like the arrogant asshole archetype of dragons, power fantasy and all that. And so obviously, like other things, are not going to respond very well to me. And there are people that hate the overpowered main character power fantasy that I enjoy, and they're going to like other things better, right? Everyone's got different things. It's why you should take what we say with a grain of salt. We're just trying to, I don't know, give you our points of view to help you come to your own decisions on if you're going to do it or not.
Well, because like for me, using an example in real life, I do believe that, you can smooth the edges or whatever, but definitely be honest about what you like and don't like. Because like, and here's a random example. If you hate lasagna, don't lie and say, oh, it was delicious when you served it, because then you're going to keep getting it. So, say, no, I actually don't like lasagna. And it's like, at least for me as someone who's reviewing this stuff, it can also help you, because if you listen to an episode and I bashed the living shit out of a book that you ended up reading and loving, now you know that my opinion means less to you. And that is good, because then you don't have to get, invested, like, oh, well, he said it's bad. I always encourage people to read these things, to make your own judgment, because it's a win-win for everybody. Even if you end up hating it too, at least now you have someone to talk to. You can send an email into the show and be like, damn, you were right, this book was terrible. Or
that was
like,
definitely
wow,
the whole point of the show. The whole point of the show, was to help people find stuff by being like, hey, look, guys, this thing exists, which I feel like we're doing a great job of, especially because we're actually getting review copies now. We've made it. Hooray, right? Part two, the whole point of part two was I personally love talking about stuff that I've read, especially as I'm reading it. I tried, before the podcast, I tried to force a book club to read Rings of Fire with Banton here, with our friend Soren, and a couple other people. I think it was Kylan and Nova. Yeah. Tried to force that. We got 5 books in, and then it fell apart. The point is, I love talking about stuff that I've read. And so anybody else that also loves talking about stuff that they've read, but they don't have people to talk about, I felt like they could do that vicariously through us during this second half discussion part. It's a lot of fun from a gaming standpoint. You have your favorite game, you play your favorite game, you've loved it. You go watch a YouTuber play through it so you can see him experience it and get his opinions on it, because it kind of gives you life to do it vicariously through them, personal opinion. And so that's kind of what I wanted to do from a book standpoint. People have read this book. I love this book. I want to, get other people's opinions on it. Oh, look, these guys reviewed this. Let's see what they have to talk about it. And then you can either fall in love with us because we say all the things you want to hear, or we can rip your soul out and stomp on it because it turns out we didn't like it as much as you did, right? The third point of the podcast definitely is that I hope, so I'm not alone, right? Or at the very least, I feel like there are people out there that share my opinions on a lot of things, particularly in what they enjoy in media, right? And for those people, they know that, oh, okay, if Ray really liked this thing, then I'll probably like it too, because he and I have very similar tastes, which is why I also strive to be very forward with my opinions and whatnot. Like, hey, I like this, and this, and therefore I liked this book. So it's easy for people who think like me to find stuff that they would enjoy. Those of you who do not think like me, I'm hoping that you understand that this is my opinion and that you may or may not like it on your own. It's why I also try to avoid, I do a very bad job of it sometimes, but I try to avoid saying things like, this was stupid, or like, this was dumb, or anything, and I try to say, I didn't like this. If it was me, I would have done this instead.
I don't do that. I'm much more emotional, and I will just say what's on my mind, and then you can smooth that over in your head however you want.
Understand that Benson's here against his will, and so he's going to be a lot more aggressive with his turning.
All right. So, going back to what he said about the book club. Yeah, when Ray... This is my fault, and this is what I was just saying. When Ray started the book club, he's like, hey, we're going to do this book club. And I went, hooray. Because I hoped and knew it was going to fall apart very quickly. And I remember... maybe I shouldn't say this. Never mind. When it did, and then Ray's like, we should make a podcast. And I'm like, oh no.
I seem to recall you are much more excited for the podcast because you like the idea of sharing your opinion and having other people listen to it.
Okay, so here's my brutal, honest opinion. Yes, dun, dun, dun. Until you started putting the brakes on and putting anchors on me and stopping my tangents. And the thing is I listen to a lot of podcasts. I know how podcasts work. Mm-hmm. You were like actively preventing me from
early on,
podcaster.
Yes, because early on I had this image in my head on we're going to talk about this stuff and I don't want to get off topic. I didn't want to spend like 2.5 hours on talking about this book because half of that is us talking about our fucking dogs all the time or whatever, right? I thought at that time that it was better to stay on topic because that's what people came for. Since then, and this is another thing why feedback is so good. I would love to hear feedback either through email or through the Discord, because I got feedback from people that they enjoyed the tangents. They enjoyed listening to us talk about whatever because we're just likable people to them. And that made my ego swell 10 times that day, right? But, so I think I let you get away with your tangents a lot more nowadays. I only put the bridge on when it gets like really, really off the rails.
Yeah. I also have learned to control my own because, yes, I have a very roundabout way of, like, there's a point to be made, and I will dance around it for, like, a half an hour before I get to it.
It's gone to the point where we come home and Tanith asks you a question, you start to explain, like, what happened, like, what we did or whatever.
I can see him mentally tune out, and I see him put his headset back on and nod and smile, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should stop.
I was going to say that I've gone to the habit of stopping you and then telling the story myself, because you'll spend like 5 minutes and I'll be like, no, here it is in 10 seconds.
Yeah. All right, so wrap up. We're at like an hour and 15.
But I thought going long was fine, Bantam. We just talked about this.
There's a nightly ritual.
Really wants to go watch TV. I'm scanning through my bullet points really fast and ignoring all the ones that are basically alpha reader feedback. It's weird. Like, I kind of want to tell people, like, hey, let me alpha read. Hey, let me edit, because a lot of times I'll read something and like, this sentence was weird. It should have been said this way. Like, if I could be an editor, that'd be very interesting. I think it'd be fun if I could only edit the stuff I cared about, dragon books. Whereas if I was an actual editor, I would just have to take whatever people give me, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like if I was going to start offering that, I'd have to charge for it because my time is valuable. I don't know what I would charge. I don't know if that's like really aggressive of me to be like, pay me to read your book. But like, I don't know. It's just a thought I've had. Here's one of my bullet points. Here's a question for you, Bantam, and for some of our listeners. You can let me know either in Discord or email. But my question for you is, how emotional do you think dragons should be? This is in regards to the scene where Ygritte says goodbye to her sons after they are banished. This level of emotion is certainly very human. Specifically, that scene gave me some Moana vibes when the mom there was saying goodbye to Moana. It was silent because it was doing a musical segment, but you know, she packaged up the food and gives it to her because she wants her to make sure she has enough supplies on her trip. But on the other end of the spectrum, we have the emotionless detachment that the dragons from like Age of Fire had, where mothers will just watch their hatchlings kill each other, or when the kids are like driven out when they hit a certain age and they're not allowed to come back. It's a lot more bestial, even if it is still intelligent. Another similar example would be in Golden Treasure. There are literally no parents. There is no parental attachment or love whatsoever. It's like, how emotional do you think dragons should be?
I was 100% totally fine with the way they were in this book. I don't like when dragons are emotionally detached. I hated when, you know, the mom just sits there and watches the babies rip each other to shreds and is like, oh, that one's strong. Hate that shit. Laying an egg and then leaving it and then having the baby hatch and fend for itself, kind of sad. I am totally fine with applying the human emotions that were the Lost Firebreather had. I actually really liked it. The mom character was the goat, and she was, I loved her as much as I loved Albuca. So
I will say that I generally enjoy a bit more emotion as well. I don't know if you'll believe this or not, but I'm quite empathetic actually. But the one thing I hold against Golden Treasure, and that's like, I love that game so much. It's become, God, I could go on a rant about that too. It's a game that would have become a ritual for me to play every year on my birthday, but when I love something, I tend to avoid doing it again, either reading it, playing it, watching it, depending what it is. For example, like, I really love The Jungle Book, but I have not, like, rewatched a Jungle Book movie in, like, 5 years at least. When something is important to me, I tend to avoid it, because if it's special, I want it to stay special. And I feel like the more I engage in it, the more normal it's going to become, right? And so, point is, Golden Treasure is, like, on this golden pedestal of, like, this is a game that means a whole lot to me. It helped me discover a lot about myself. All listeners, if you have not, you should go listen to our episode on that, because you get to hear me cry. It's amazing. But the one thing that I hold against it is the lack of emotional bonds between the parents and the kids. I played that game being very sad that I could not be raised by my draconic parents, and when we got to the Age of Creation, I was very, very let down that I could not raise my own children. That is something that I had been looking forward to in a play as dragon type game, and in the dragon game that I wish I could make, which was a very dragon lifestyle type thing, very similar to Golden Treasure. I just didn't want it to be a visual novel style because I wanted it to be more action oriented. More on that later. I can rant about that another day. When we don't want to read something, I can just spend an hour talking about my dream game, right?
Yeah.
But part of my dream game was definitely the whole, you get to be raised and then you get to raise children. Like, that was a big deal to me. So yes, I also agree that I like more emotion in my dragons, not quite to the point where they feel very humanly, because I do like when dragons have a very alien view of the world. So I would say the perfect mix would, writing style aside, Bantam, the perfect mix for me was Mating Flight. These were very, very intelligent dragons, very powerful dragons. They would go around overloading the shit out of everything, right? And they were fairly emotional. Like, the main character didn't have a whole lot because she literally could not feel, like physically feel, but I feel like that made her very cold and class to everyone around her, right?
Yeah.
That was a plot point in the book for sure. But they still had emotions. They were gay dragons that fell in love, and like, they loved each other, right? It was very gay. But point being is, they had emotions, but it was not to the human level, because they literally could not see lesser species as equal. There was like some innate need to like talk down to them or whatever, because you are a small squishy thing with no power that lives for a fraction of my lifespan, and you only have 5 senses and I have like 17 senses, right? They had like their danger sense, they had their hua or whatever the fucking R that they had was, whatever. I need to reread it at some point.
You could do that by yourself.
I will.
I got like, I think halfway through that book, and then Diletan and I, because Diletan was still there at the time, right? Yeah, Diletan and I were just, we agreed to split the rest of the book up and then summarize it to each other, because the book was just so bad that I just did not want to continue reading it. And this was before that do not finishes were allowed.
I wanted to make sure you had them to talk about so we actually could fill an episode and it's not just an hour and a half of me talking to you and you not going like,
Yeah.
But there is something to be said about having a DNF on record, right? Coming to the podcast, being like, I could not finish this, I got halfway through and I had to put it down. I feel like that is valuable in itself to the listeners.
Yeah.
I guess a couple quick thoughts. I just want to say that I loved Hammer. Like, he's still... A book is my favorite, right? I love the Big Brother character. I love the protective one. I wish I had a Big Brother that cared about me in such a way, right?
Whoa.
Whoa.
Hey. I'm right here.
Yeah, but you don't love me that way.
I do love you that way.
No, you'd rather play a stupid card game. But yeah, I loved Hammerclaw. The Emperor, the jury's out on the Emperor, right? He definitely seems bad in some ways. I was expecting him to be abusive towards Pike, honestly. There's definitely something there, especially because he's the Emperor. Shit, hold on. Was he the Emperor that killed the Fire Nation off? Or was that his dad?
No, it was the Emperor.
The current Emperor? The current standing Emperor was the one that killed
he
off
was the one who
Firebreathers?
He was the one who basically said, go do that, and Hammer was on the ship that delivered the payload and gave the order to do so.
Okay, so he's definitely this. I'm expecting him to be crazy, like borderline dementia or schizophrenia or something, because to give the order to wipe out an entire species just because they didn't want to like give you something, give them slaves. I don't remember what it was exactly, but like still, it's fucking bonkers. But on the other hand, the way he talks and thinks about Hammer, you know, his reaction when Hammer came back and he saw him, like, that was a little heartwarming to me, right? Yeah. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the overt gayness. It was beautiful. I love it. More gay dragons, please. And they immediately need to have sex. Prepare the royal chambers. The consort has returned. It's like, damn. But I liked it. So, like, that's honest. Okay, this is another weird tangent. How to word this in? No, I'm just going to be very blunt about it. I love sex in books and games and whatever, right? To me, sex is a part of life. It is not something that should be shamed, which it has been by major religions for a long-ass time. It is not something you need to be ashamed of or hide. There's a time and place for it in the real world, right? You know, don't, like, force other people to experience it. I'm very sorry to the one person in our chat who does not like hearing about this at all. But I don't need every book to be an erotic book. I don't need it to be very blatantly like, and then he thrust inside her. I don't need that. In fact, there have been times where I've read erotic books where I have skipped over the sex scenes because it's detracting from the story, which is why I'm there. However, I love when it is addressed. I love when it is implied and faded to black because, again, it is a natural part of life that people do, and it should be addressed. And so the fact that you knew they went and banged it out immediately, but that it was never explicitly shown or talked about, is perfect. It's wonderful, and I love it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, the way that was handled was absolutely flawless. It's you know, unless you're writing a straight up porn book, then you don't really need to ever say what happened in it. Just fade to black, or and then the characters took off, and yeah, we had sex. You know, like a chapter later. Hey, can I destroy your world for a sec?
Fine.
You say that I'm not like the older brother because I play a card game, whatever. Yeah, and Albuka also did flying around in those racing rings, and Ash stood by and was cheering him on.
Hey, I've stood by and cheered you on. I was laying on your bed just watching you drive around a stupid dirt road.
Dilettante got me this very minor tangent. Dilettante got me this new game called Drive Beyond Horizons. And you basically just get a junk car and just drive down an endless strip of road in an endlessly repeating, pattern, and stop at points of interest and fix up your car. That's the whole concept for the game. And I don't know why, but it has fucking destroyed my brain. I need to keep playing it.
I think we're out of topics to talk about.
Yeah.
Is there anything itching in your brain?
No. Like I said, final rating, 7 out of 10. It's a good book. I mean, I don't mean for this to sound insulting. I really honestly don't. But the fact that the book went by so quickly was a blessing.
So it's difficult for me to gauge its length because the format we were given was definitely very scrunched. Like it was like 440
it was
something
Courier.
pages.
It was Courier new font.
Yeah, but like the PDF
with, like,
we were
double
given was
spacing.
440 pages, but then apparently the final print was only like 300 and something. So it was difficult to gauge how long it was exactly. But according to the author, he said it was twice as long as Lazy Scales, or like
Really?
close to it. I don't know. He mentioned that when I said it was moving very fast, or whatever. He said that I was surprised because it's like twice as long. Oh, I don't know.
When I was reading it, because it opened up in an Internet Explorer tab, if you press in the mouse wheel, and then you just move the mouse up or down, it will scroll the page. So I was able to click on that and move it down like 2 ticks, and read while it was like reading the ending credits. I challenged myself to stay ahead of it. But then I ended up reading a little too fast, and I would like, okay, one more tick. Oh, that's too fast. But I had a little bit of fun with it because every time I had to read a Pike chapter, I was like, ugh.
One thing that I do need to touch on really fast, when he listened to our last episode, the author wanted me to address something that I said last time, that apparently book 2 has already been written and he's just doing like final editing. Apparently that was wrong. The first book has this rough draft done, and he's going over the second pass, so it's not as far along as I made it sound. He just didn't want his fans to think that he was like speeding through it way too fast, because apparently that was a problem with the second arc of Lazy Scales, that he sped through it, or like someone thought he sped through it or something, and he just didn't want the same mistake to happen. Yeah, so it's not as far along as I made it sound like, so sorry about that. Alright, well, thanks for coming and joining us, everybody. Listen to us talk about the Lost Firebreather by D.M. Gilmore. The book has been released a week ago, so go and read it for yourselves if you haven't yet. Though I don't know why you came to listen to the spoiler talk then. I don't know. There are some people that don't like surprises, and so they would only read stuff after they've had things spoiled. These are the people that, like, Tanith is kind of one of them, right? Watching an anime series, and then, like, by episode 4, they're ordering the Wikipedia looking how the stuff ends because they can't handle the stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm that way. That's why I end up watching a lot of really old movies that I've watched 1,000 times, because I like the comfort of knowing what's coming.
But yeah, thank you for coming. Be sure to let us know what you think about our opinions, right? Do you agree with my crackpot elemental theory? The Iron Keepers are actually air element? Let me know. Bantam, how can they get into contact with us?
All right, so we got a little bit of a new format now. All right, so you can get in touch with us at our email at wadpodcastmail@gmail.com. Very deepest apologies to the last 2 authors that reached out to us there, because it came from a personal email. It got filtered. So they were like, he ignored me. And I searched my spam folder, and there they were. So I made some changes to my spam folder settings, and hopefully it doesn't do that. We also have a Discord, which will be linked in the show notes. And then something I keep forgetting, and I don't think I've ever advertised except maybe once, we do have a subreddit. I made it.
Yeah, it exists. No one has posted in it yet. It's kind
no one's posted
I
except...
think we
no,
made
Tricinix did.
He posted one thing just so it had something in there.
Yeah.
I think we made it just for the sake of, like, grabbing it, because we've heard horror stories of people, like, will just make subreddits and just sit on the name or whatever.
I've heard horror stories of people who, like someone creates something, like, let's just use ours. We made a podcast called World of Dragons. A fan of the show, I'm going to use Tricinix as a bad example. Tricinix goes, I love this podcast. I'm going to make a subreddit for it. And then he owns it. And then he goes crazy drunk with power. And he just starts banning people and saying stuff like, whatever. And then we go, hey, knock it off. And then he bans us. Because it's like...
The point is, Bantam wanted to control it, so he just made it.
Yeah. But, yeah, r/World of Dragons. So, it's got 5 members.
I mean, the thing is, all of our social interaction with our listeners happens on our Discord. I don't really know what we'd put on the subreddit, but who knows? Maybe we'll come up with something eventually. But yeah, we do have a Discord. The link to that will be in the show notes, the description, the comments, the whatever. Because Discord links fucking suck.
Yeah.
Bantam, what are we going to review next time?
I don't actually know.
We don't know. We didn't talk about this beforehand. Oh, no.
All right. You know what? I'm going to be decisive for once.
Uh-oh.
This weekend, this coming weekend, let's try the the having the audience listen in while we watch Dragon Keeper.
Oh, wait, hold on. Didn't you want to try the Mystery Science 3000 approach?
Yeah. We'll still record ourselves, but, people can watch Dragon Keeper with us. I'll stream it, and we'll record our reactions while we watch the movie for the first time.
Yeah, I feel like the audience would be distracting if we're trying to record a commentary track.
Oh. Well, then, all right, fine. Then you and I will do it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll figure something out. Bantam wants to do a movie, and he deserves a break after all these books. We got sent some physical books in the mail, which big thank you for. We posted that picture on our Discord, and it also got posted to Wormworks. And then we were also gifted an ebook copy of a different book from a different author. I don't know you guys' names top right.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry.
So Justin Lee sent us hardcovers of the Dragon's Paladin, Scales in Honor, Dragon's Paladin, Scales in Honor, Emerald Secrets, and Scales of Honor, City of Light, as well as a pack of 7 stickers each. When he asked if we wanted physical copies, I was like, you know what? I we can collect some Dragon books. And then he's like, do you want hardcover or softcover? And I originally paused because I'm like, can I have hardcover?
Those are usually twice as expensive. Can I have them?
They're usually twice as expensive and harder to get. And I'm like, but you're giving me the option, and I really do want hardcover. And so I was like, hardcover if that's okay. He's like, yeah, sure. Do you guys want 2 sets? And I'm like, we live together, and we're going to live together forever. And I'm like, I guess? And so, yeah, he sent 2 sets of his hardcover books. The picture that I posted in general on the Discord, just imagine that times 2. And huge thanks to him. And then we got a Kindle copy of another book from another author.
Yeah, it was Chronicles of Line Part 1, The Dark Sculptor.
Yeah, so Scales in Honor we should do first. We're not going to read the whole trilogy because holy shit.
You're going to read the whole trilogy.
Well, I'm looking at the books, and the first one is like a decent book. Like, you could beat someone to death with that book.
Absolutely. The whole format of the show is that we're supposed to just read the first one and use that as the introduction and, like, explain to the listeners, like, hey, here's this new book. This is what the first book is like, and see if you want to read the free stuff, right? I don't really want to go through the entire series of anymore, like you do with Age of Fire and you do with Laser Scales. We'll get back to doing that eventually, but my backlog is growing so much that I think we should only do book 1 for the time being until we get that shrunken down a bit. However, with this trilogy specifically, it's supposed to be a human and dragon love story, and there's actually supposed to be some explicit scenes in it, but from my understanding, those don't happen until book 2. So this is one of those instances where I'm like, I feel like I, at the very least, should read book 2 so I can give some insight on how those are done when we're reviewing book 1, right?
Okay. Yeah, because I'm looking at the physical books, and the first 2 are tolerable, and then the third book is
the
like
first
one
2
of those
combined
coffee table books. It's like one of those books where if you drop it on a table, you might break the table, and I'm like, holy fuck, no.
So we will do that one, but we're gonna do some movies for the sake of Bantam's mental well-being before then.
Yeah,
because he's just finished reading 2 different physical books, and it's like, I gotta be nice to him.
Okay, so we're gonna do a movie or 2, probably just 1. I could do just 1. It's fine. I'm Ray is chipping away the rust from I don't know what it is, and don't quote me on this. And if you ever use this against me, I'll kill you. Reading a physical book was easier than the audiobook for some fucking reason.
It helps you focus because you're forced to just focus on that.
Whereas I think
audiobook becomes background noise if you're doing with other stuff.
That's true. So we're gonna do a movie. We're gonna do the Dragon Keeper Mystery Science Theater 3000 thing, and then we're gonna do Scales in Honor, the Dragon's Paladin. Depending on how fast I get through that, I might go into book 2 so that when we record, we can both have the first 2 books because of all the whatever. And then after that, we're going to be doing A Chronicle of Lies, The Dark Sculptor by Abraham C. Carson. He's the one who sent the other digital copy on Kindle for us. Again, huge thanks for that. Again, I'm the kind of person that will judge a book by their cover, and so far I'm liking what I'm seeing with both books. I mean, I also like the Lost Firebreather.
Okay, if we're judging books by their cover, I just want to say this real fast. The Scales in Honor covers here that I'm looking at, They are beautiful. They look like traditional fantasy book covers. Like, if I saw these in the library, I would have assumed they were officially published, not indie published, right? They look like your generic Dragon fantasy covers from, like, the early 2000s, maybe. They're very similar to Dragonlance covers, almost, honestly.
Yeah. Dragonlance.
So they're very good in that regard. The Chronicle of Lies cover, it is... how to say it? It is very... not thematic. It's kind of cinematic. I see what you're going for. It's a shot from behind the main character, and they're looking at some spiky, jagged rocks, which I'm guessing are going to be important to the story. I will say, though, that I am not very pleased at looking at the back of the character, especially because this is book 1. I would have liked to see his front, to see their face or whatever, right? That's just a personal opinion.
There's also some other stuff going on, like it looks like one of the wings is broken, and there's like a fire. Oh, that's a...
No, that's just the lighting on a leaf in front of it, I think.
Oh, okay. It looks like a Lego flame piece.
Yeah. And you know what?
Oh.
I think the reason I need to see their front is very, like, selfish. It's I want to see how much of a snout they have. Because I have seen... But as someone who's read a lot of eroticas where they try to make the dragons as human as possible, I just have PTSD of anthro dragons with flat faces. Because, like, it's not kissable if it's not a human face, right? So, I'm not saying you did that, but I'm saying that's why I need to see his friend. I need to see what kind of face they got.
Yeah. No, I get you.
But yeah, again, so that's going to be our plan. We're going to stick with it. I'm going to tell Bantam, look, we're not playing Baldur's Gate 3 tonight because we have to record our commentary track, right?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I just
the plan.
Farted, holy shit. Oh, yeah, so someone that's just posted a picture. That looks beautiful. Thank you. That's a good snoot.
That is a very handsome fucking dragon. Holy shit.
It's a Fabio dragon. It could totally be.
That is a Fabio dragon.
But yeah, okay, so yes, Drain back on track. Thank you for coming once again. Third time I'm thanking you all, but we keep sidetracking. But yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
Yep. See you later.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.